welcome back to the first official episode of Living Local Lombard for the new year 2021. Today, joining me on the show is Rachael Real, designated managing broker, who has been in the business for 15 years, and she truly knows Lombard as well as anybody does. So Rachael, thank you so much for joining me in the new year.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So first and foremost, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do in this role, what your time in Lombard has been like, your experiences working in this market, anything you want to share.
Right. Okay. So I have been in Lombard for going on almost 19 years now. Moved here from the close by suburb of Villa Park, where I was for about 4.5 years before that. I've been married since 1995 and bought our first house when I was 19.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I've been a
Goals.
long-term homeowner. I refused to rent. I couldn't do it. So we bought our first house at 19. My husband and I both grew up in Elmhurst.
Okay.
So went from there to, since it was very unaffordable, went from there to Glendale Heights, where we lived for about a year and a half, about 2 years or so. Then built some new construction out in Bolingbrook, stayed there for about a year and a half, and then decided that was too far from work. So we came back up to Villa Park, and then in Lombard since 2002, when my oldest was born. So I have an 18-year-old, almost 19-year-old freshman at University of Kansas, which that's been a very interesting freshman year for him, being stuck in a dorm and no social anything. But he's fortunate that he's there with his two good friends from town. So it made it a little bit easier for the transition. My younger one is a junior over at Lombard East, and both of my boys have gone through all of the Lombard public schools, starting in Hammersmith, then Westlake, then Lombard East. So good hands-on experience with that. Like I said, I've been an agent since 2004. I've worked in various brokerages over the years, from small family-owned independent brokerages of 12 agents, up to, larger corporate brokerages of, 200 plus agents. For the most part, I've been an agent the majority of that time, with a couple of years that I served as a designated managing broker of a large brokerage in Glen Ellen with 200 agents, as well as a small boutique brokerage in Lombard.
Okay.
Decided that really kind of wasn't where I wanted to go with it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of liability involved with that. And then personally, I feel like the bar is a little bit low for entry into the business. So you're hurting a lot of cash, a lot of liability around, which made me a bit uncomfortable. So I decided to take myself out of that completely, go completely independent. And that's what I've been doing since.
Nice. So talk a little bit about your role and what you do, because I think, especially like for people maybe that have not bought a house or maybe have not been through the process several times, there is so much lingo. It seems like a very scary process to a lot of people. That's very foreign. So what specifically do you do?
So as an agent, a licensee, most of us in this area here, based on our membership of our local board, are also realtors. So not every person licensed is a realtor. People that are realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. And the biggest differentiation between a realtor and a regular licensee is adherence to the National Code of Ethics. So that it requires you to behave at a level higher than that of a regular agent. Again, most people here are realtors because our local board requires that membership. Okay. From a real estate standpoint, as far as what we do on a daily basis, it can run anywhere from, showing properties, helping buyers, doing consultations for buyers and sellers, discussing property tax assessments, which is something I've done for the last several years. Last year, we did a large workshop with one of the local representatives here in town over at the library, because it was a reassessment year. So all of the assessments went way up. So we did a couple of workshops, helped people understand that process and appeal property assessments. Again, it can run anywhere from showing homes, selling homes, acting as a bit of a consultant, doing some educating to the public as to how the business works. So I think that's where the biggest challenge is with this business in general, is that with all the technology that we have now, the consumer has all this information at their fingertips.
Yeah.
However, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to interpret it. They don't know what to do with it. So they've got a lot of information. And the biggest challenge we have now is because of all of these websites like Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Redfin, all of the different apps that are out there, people don't really understand what that automated valuation model is, which is the number they assign as the value to your property.
Yeah.
So it's explaining how that works, explaining why it's not the best way to determine the value of a property, whether you're buying or selling it. But again, it can run the gamut. I mean, right now I've been working with a homeowner in town who was sold a lemon property where there was non-disclosure of a serious problem.
Oh.
So we are working together to try and get that rectified so that it salvages, their credit and prevents it from happening to somebody else.
Wow, interesting. A lot of different hats to juggle.
There are a lot of hats to juggle. A lot of it you become a therapist also.
Yeah, it sounds like therapist, educator,
Yes.
business leader, accountant.
Yes, everything. Right. And of course, things that we don't have the ability to counsel on, like accounting or law, we have fantastic advisors that I work with that I've screened over the last 15 years. So I know that I've got somebody who's really good and really capable of answering a question. So my bar of references for other professionals is super high because I want to make sure I'm giving out the right information.
Yeah, I definitely got that vibe from you. And I know you also know a lot about Lombard, the current market, and that you probably know some of the history. I'm sure you have some fun facts, some stories. Tell me a little bit about what you know about the history of Lombard, or as it relates to the market, and then what is the market like today?
Okay, so Lombard is a really unique little suburb in that it's sandwiched between two more affluent communities, which of course come with higher price tags.
Yeah.
So we're west of Elmhurst and east of Glen Ellen, with our stepsister Villa Park in there too, which is also very affordable, but sometimes gets lost because it's very small.
Yeah.
But Lombard, Villa Park, kind of people packaged together. So a lot of the things that are true about Lombard are also true about Villa Park. But Lombard has historically been very much a commuter town going way back into the 1800s. We had 3 train lines that came through town, so it was a very central hub for people who commuted into the city. So a lot of the homes here centrally around are located more in closer proximity to the downtown and train station are 20s and 30s and 40s built, because that's when things started to really grow. And then as you span out, you have 50s, 60s ranches, some 70s split levels. We've got a wide variety of housing here. We do have the highest concentration of lustron homes also outside of Columbus, Ohio, where those were originally manufactured. So those you might know as those little steel houses. They've got the squares on them. They're all metal. So they have metal insides, outsides, and roofs. So they're about 1,000 square feet. They have no basements. And those were made from all of the World War II steel that was left over. So they built tons of Texaco gas stations. Then they put all the steel on the railroad and sent it out. And we ended up with about 35 to 40 that are still in existence, which is interesting. So you'll see those as you go through town, and then when you go inside, the insides are all metal, everything's metal. So they were kit homes that arrived by rail car. So interesting. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, how have we evolved over time in terms of style, price, things like that? Like what kind of is there like a beginning point, like a beginning time frame for like when the market started, like informed in Lombard?
Well, again, a lot of those original houses, closer to downtown were you're in your 1920s, 30s. So that you've got your older homes there. When we track market stats, we can go back as many as 10 years or so. But, the biggest question that people have right now is how did the crash of 2008-ish, how did that affect Lombard? And fortunately in Lombard, we were hit with it just like everybody else was, but not at the extent of some of the more expensive suburbs, because there was a far bigger gap of where you could go from the value to where people ended up. So we were hit, but because we're still very affordable, we recovered a little bit quicker, and we didn't see as much of a hit on that. As far as the market now and with COVID, it's funny because when that started back in last March, everything shut down. We were all, working from home, and just we all hit pause and said, okay, now what? Waited for answers. As soon as we were let back to go back out and start working again, it came back in such a way that nobody expected. I mean, we have been running ourselves ragged since March. We never had a slow summer. We really didn't have a slow winter. We're still out with buyers looking for properties. We've got a lack of inventory, and not enough properties for people to buy, and people are still looking. So COVID, as much as we thought it was going to end up being a horrible year, a lot of us have been working harder than we have in the last several years.
Is there a specific reason or a reason you think that there is such a high demand for housing? I mean, I know I've seen, headlines about that, not only locally, but nationally, that there is a high demand and there's a low supply right now.
Yes, interest rates are ridiculously low. So for anybody who is renting, I mean, think about buying. If you're even close to thinking about, being in the situation where you want to be in one spot for a while and stop renting, now's the time to do it. That said, COVID has also made lending guidelines a little more strict. So it's been a little more challenging in some instances to get things done. But between the low rates and the different need for housing. So right now you have people that for the last several years have been traveling a lot, have been doing all kinds of, not necessarily staying in one place and not needing a home office, to businesses taking a big shift and going, hey, you know what, we're not going to be doing as much traveling. You're now going to be working from home, 3 days a week or whatever it is. So the way people use their homes has changed. Yeah. So we're seeing that too. We're also seeing people leave the city because they're getting out of the more urban areas, a little more congested condos, shared elevators, more dense populations, and going out to the suburbs where they have a little bit more elbow room.
Yeah.
And to be able to work from home.
Is there anything specific that you've noticed that draws people to Lombard? Is there anything specific about the community that a lot of people highlight, about, the styles of the homes, anything like that are big noticeable trends?
I think people end up here because of the fact that it is super convenient to the city, super convenient to other suburbs. So you have access to get to other things easily. And you have a really nice population of people. They're just, everybody here is just nice. They're nice people. Yeah. So, you move into town and people are, and with Facebook being what it is now, which it wasn't even around 18 years ago when I moved here, you need something now, you hop online and go, hey, who's got this? Who's got that? Where do I go for this? Where do I go for that? And people are always very helpful, as far as that goes too. We are super affordable. So looking at last year's December 2019, the median sale price in Lombard was $233,000. The average increase in percentages per year for properties is about 2 to 3%. So kind of matches along with your cost of living increase. So from last year to this year, we had a 7.3% increase in property value.
Oh my gosh.
And that's almost double, or more than double. So our average or median sale price in December of 2020 was $250,000. Again, still super affordable when you look at Glen Ellen, which the median sale price there is almost $100,000 more. So you can afford a lot more here. It's funny because when I moved into Lombard, I again grew up in Elmhurst, and being in town here, I lived here for a couple of years before I got licensed and got into the business. And every time somebody would move into our neighborhood started to turn over a little bit as we moved in. So we were kind of the first younger family that moved in. And then every time a house sold, it ended up being another younger family that moved in. And it became funny because it turns out that several people that moved into the neighborhood were all people that I went to high school with. So it's now become the block party / high school reunion of sorts. My current next door neighbor in my second house here, it was a year older than me when we graduated high school. So it's kind of funny. They all started looking in Elmhurst, realized that when you look for homes there, you get a lot less for your money. So then they move over to Lombard, and we all kind of ended up in the same little spot, which is interesting.
Interesting. Yeah,
It
that
is.
does
It is.
it does seem to happen. And
It
there's
does.
a really tight community, and a
Yes.
lot of people do get drawn back. Like when I think about, raising a family in a couple of years, like thinking outside of Lombard, I'm like, what? Like
Right. Right.
that's a
It almost feels
possibility?
weird to go somewhere else.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It feels
Yeah.
weird. Right. Right.
So let's move to you again. Talk. You and I talked a couple times about the way that you do business, the way you operate and function. That it's really like a small business, a local business. Talk a little bit
Yes.
about that and kind of what makes your structure and style of doing things, unique in that aspect.
Sure. So, most people do not realize that realtors, specifically, each individual realtor is a small business. So the brokerage that a realtor affiliates with is a tool for the licensee for their business. So they supply you with insurance. They supply you with some, a database to house your information.
Hmm.
They'll supply you with a platform to do some marketing. They'll supply you with signage. You are still the one who's responsible for 110% of every piece of business that you earn and that you do. So your brokerage isn't giving you or providing you with leads for your business. They aren't providing you anything. You're in fact paying them. So most people don't understand that and think, oh, you're making a salary, or oh, you're getting mileage, or oh, you're getting this and that, and you're making this big commission over here when you sell a piece of property.
Hmm.
It's not the case. So if you take a commission from the sale of a property, you're paying your insurance out of that, you're paying your marketing, you're paying for photography, you're paying for all of the things that you need to run a business,
Hmm.
and you're paying your taxes out of that.
Mm.
And then you're also paying your brokerage. So by the time you're done, that big commission that you've made is now about a sixth of that.
Huh.
By the as far as what you're bringing home in payment to yourself.
Yeah.
So that's how it functions, very much like a small business.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like I'm learning so much.
Right, aren't
This
you?
is good for when I purchase a home.
Exactly, yes.
I'll know where
So
to
it's
go.
really right. So it's really important, I think, from a wanting to support a local business and wanting to support a small business, also to, when you are a buyer or seller, working with someone local. So
Mm.
someone local is really going to know your neighborhood, is really going to know those lemon properties that I talked about. Unfortunately, when this person purchased the property, they purchased it with someone that wasn't in the area, an agent from another marketplace, who didn't know that property had a sordid history. So moving into town, you go to sell that property later. Now you've got, what am I looking at here? Now I'm looking at being in a pickle because I have a property that everyone knows I can't sell.
Uh-huh.
So that was an eye-opening thing for that homeowner.
Huh.
But yeah, from a buyer standpoint, knowing for someone to sit down at a buyer consultation for an agent to sit down at a buyer consultation with a client and say, okay, tell me what you're looking for. We always start with that. Sit down and go, okay, what do you want? Tell me what you're looking for, what's important,
Yeah.
what's a must-have, what would you like, but it's not super important, and what are your deal breakers? Talk through that, get them set up if they haven't already been set up with a lender. So you have to start with a pre-approval. In this market, if you don't have a pre-approval, you don't have anything. Because if you go out and look at a property and you decide that you walk in the door and 5 minutes later you're going, hey, this is my house, I want to pursue it. By the time you've even made the phone call to your lender, someone else has already got the offer on it.
Huh.
So you have to be well prepared. You have to be really well prepared.
How do people typically like select someone or find you or pick the right person to work with?
So the biggest recommendation we can make to people is to get a personal referral.
Okay.
So, talk to people that that have bought and sold. Talk to people even online. Go to Facebook. Ask for recommendations. Hey, I'm thinking about buying or selling a home. Who do you recommend? And that's been a really great resource for the community as well. You'll see those posts come up every once in a while. Hey, I'm thinking about selling my home. Who have people worked with, and why did you like them? Tell me a little bit about that. And that's been a good resource for people that way. I think it's very important for people to ask the right questions when they're interviewing an agent. So there's different questions that you want to ask as a buyer, different questions you want to ask as a seller, obviously, because your goals are a little bit different. And I'm going to be putting all of that together on a new website that I'm going to be rolling out in the next couple of days. So I'm going to have a page completely dedicated to sellers, completely dedicated to buyers, and those questions that you want to ask to make sure that you're aligning yourself with someone whose goals are the same as yours. And then also educating the consumer a little bit more than what we're seeing now.
Very nice. I'm going to have to go on that website, and maybe in a couple of years when I move out of my parents' house, I will
there you go.
I'll find you.
But there you go. I would love to help you.
So my last question, you mentioned that you had like a true crime story. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So
I
everybody
love
likes
true. Yes. Everybody loves it.
Everybody likes to know what's the little, what's the unique thing about your town that kind of fits in with true crime. So, and this has come up every once in a while. You'll see little tidbits about it come up. But on the north end of town, back in the 1969 to 71 is where Ted Kaczynski, who is we all know as the Unabomber, where his parents lived. So he also lived. Yes.
No way.
They're between 69 and 71. Yes. That home sold. Yeah, his mother sold the home back in 96. And which the manifesto that he wrote was published in 95. So when his mother sold the home in 96, they were cleaning out the property and found some writings that were very similar to that manifesto, which was part of the reason why there ended up being an FBI raid or a search of the property looking for more information.
You know what's so crazy? So last week when I was sick, I watched, I think it was on Netflix. I think it was a series. I think it was called Manhunt. The dramatization of how everything played out, and there was a scene in his mom's house where they found all of these letters that led to that.
Exactly, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh my God!
I know, isn't it wild?
Wow.
Right, it's just kind of an interesting little tidbit. Yes, yes. So and I don't know if you would remember back in 1982, there were Tylenol murders that happened in the area. And while he was never officially charged with anything or charged with that, nobody was. They never really solved that specifically, but he was a suspect in that also because he was known to be in town that weekend that all those murders occurred, and there were 7 of them total. He was in town at his parents' property in Lombard at that time, and the different locations where those Tylenol bottles were tampered with, Lombard in the map was right in the center. So that's why he became a suspect from that too.
Oh my God.
Kind of an interesting little tidbit. Yeah, if you search online, you can find some photos of him standing in front of his parents' house. Just kind of an interesting little,
Wow, I learned so much today. This is great.
Right, didn't you?
All right. Well, tell folks where they can find you, interact with you, your website, if you have any other contact information you want to share.
Yes. So my website is rachaelreal.com, and that's RachaelReal.com. I've got a funky spelled first name there, so that throws people off quite a bit. I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/RachaelRealEstate. So you can also find me there.
Awesome. And I will link to both of those in the bio below this video.
Perfect.
Rachael, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great new year. I know we already talked, it's going, very smoothly so far.
Right. Let's hope it stays that way, and just can get better from here.
Yeah. But yeah, I will definitely hit you up in a couple years when
I would love
it. And maybe you can help me.
I would be happy to.
All right. Thank you again and take care.
You too. Thanks so much. Have a good one.